Welcome back, fellow jazz bones. Felipe here. 2025, April 12th. We're getting there. It's Record Store Day. As usual, let's go over some of the releases by Resonance Records by our friend Zev Feldman, and also Elemental Records, which in collaboration with Zev from Spain, they have been releasing amazing records for Record Store Day, other releases throughout the year, and they're based in Spain. One thing I like to add here is that every time we talk about Record Store Day, we think about archival releases, and I think archival is getting initially got like a not so great reputation because people thought, oh, the sound is kind of muffled, it's bad, it's old, it's bad recorded. But I think Zev and Elemental have been bringing this to a new level, especially in this past few years. All the releases, they have been up to great standards, great mastering, great tape sourcing. It's been never disappointing, everything they have been getting. So to start with, it's a triple release. Charles Mingus in Argentina. All these records will be exclusive to Record Store Day with a limited number of copies. However, the next Friday, April 18th, they're going to be available digitally and in CD as well. So this came as a triple record. Is a triple gatefold. Super high quality, the best caliber you can possibly think. Amazingly pressed records. All my copies, they came absolutely pristine, super clean and great sounding. This was mastering at the Mastering Lab by Matthew Lutens after being restored from the original master tapes recorded in Argentina by Carlos Melero. So just to put into context, in 1977 was already a late period for Charles Mingus, and especially this quintet here is quite interesting. He's with Ricky Ford on tenor sax, Jack Walton on trumpet, Robert Nellums on piano, and Danny Richmond on drums, who had just replaced Don Pollin in this great quintet. There's very few recordings of this band, and 1977 was an interesting period. He was traveling through South America. Oddly enough, there's not much publicity of his passage there. There was not much being said about him, the band. Actually, he's got more publicity and more talk on some rock magazines. However, the concerts, they were... What gets clear in this record is the will, the desire of this band to sort of express themselves, be themselves. So the record is very loose in a sense in that they're not afraid to try and experiment and push boundaries musically, sonically, in what they can possibly do. So also Charles Mingus not only plays bass, but he also playing piano. So they go from classic compositions like Goodbye Pork Pie Hat and Fables of Fables to some later day compositions as Duke Ellington's Sound of Love, 3 or 4 Shades of Blue, and to me a 19, almost 20-minute song, which is the highlight of the album, called Cumbia and Jazz Fusion, where they magnificently fuse the Latin American rhythm of cumbia with jazz. It's a really exploratory piece. I think it's just one of the highlights there. Whoever gets this record, that's one of the tracks to search for. I definitely recommend this one. So regardless of the era, I think Mingus always found a way to surround himself with great musicians, and this band is no exception. And this record is a great opportunity for people to get a taste of his later day bands, his later day band, which is not so recorded, if any. There's a very few recordings of this band, and it really surprised me. I'm not like a huge Mingus fan. I don't collect Mingus, but Charles Mingus in Argentina with a great booklet as always. Great big booklet for the ones who like pictures of the tapes. Tapes are here. Great essays by his biographer Brian Priestley, by the Argentinian writer Claudio Parisi, and there's so many great words and amazing information about this, and also a foreword by Zev Feldman, amazing photography as well. It's one of the records to look for in a record store day. As I said, I'm not a huge Mingus fan, but this record surprised me musically and sonically. So great chance for you to get more into Mingus or late Mingus if you're just aware of, familiar with his very early work, which is great. But I think towards late in his career, he gets more exploring there. He plays with younger musicians, and I think it's a great chance to hear some of that. One of the few, if not the only chance to hear at this late band in this 1977 concert in Argentina, which, just as a reminder, this is a follow-up. There's only one other Mingus on Resonance, which was a Ronnie Scott's, recorded Ronnie Scott's in released in 2022. And this sort of follows the tradition of the Bill Evans releases in Argentina, which sound spectacular and are really advanced and adventurous and beautiful music. So this one I enjoyed, and I recommend you guys to go search for. So the next two records I'm going to talk about, also on Resonance, they were actually recorded at the Blue Morocco in the Bronx, which was a club owned by Sylvia Reynolds. Sylvia Reynolds, who later became the owner and founder of Sugar Hill Records, who was one of the main responsibles for putting hip-hop on the map by releasing the very early first successful hip-hop recordings, including the iconic Rapper's Delight. So the first record I'm going to talk about today is Kenny Dorham's Blue Bossa in the Bronx. It comes on a gatefold, is a double record, of course, released on Resonance, Zev Feldman's label here in the US. It was transferred from the original tape reels, mastered by Frank Gallo as a Resonance studio. Vinyl was cut by Matthew Lutens and pressed on 800 gram at the Le Vinylist as a limited edition package. CD also will be available on April 18. Here's an example of the record. Really nice pressing again. You always can expect that. And it comes with a great booklet with many amazing pictures from Kenny Dorham, the band. Let me get a picture of the band here. There you go. You see Sonny Red, Cedar Walton, Paul Chambers, and all those guys. And here's a really cool map of the Bronx with the location of the club. Everything in blue, of course. So Kenny Dorham's quintet here is Kenny Dorham on trumpet, of course, Sonny Red on alto sax, Cedar Walton on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Dennis Charles on drums. Blue Bossa, of course, is the title of the classic Kenny Dorham song that was released initially on Joe Henderson's Page One. So Kenny Dorham and Joe Henderson, they had a long date relationship, friendship. When Joe Henderson came back from the military in the late 50s, early 60s, he met Kenny Dorham at a party, and Kenny Dorham introduced him, brought him to Blue Note, introduced him to Alfred Lyon, and the rest is history. The music writing of Joe Henderson and his direction and everything, they got so good. They got so exactly what Blue Note wanted. So Joe Henderson immediately gets hired by Blue Note because of Kenny Dorham. And Blue Bossa was an early also sung by Kenny that Joe Henderson amazingly recorded on his days. This was recorded by Bernard Drayton in 1967. I think it's very important to understand that it's immense, huge significance of Kenny Dorham. And one thing that's always said about him by musicians, by critics, by fans, is his tone. He has a very recognizable tone, and he's a musician of huge importance that sometimes doesn't get the love he deserves. Art Blakey used to say he was the uncrowned king, which is a really good, perhaps a really good definition there. And also important to remember in the bands that he played, right? At Charlie Parker's band, he follows Miles Davis, and then he replaced Clifford Brown with a quintet with Max Roach. So perhaps those were maybe reasons why he didn't get so much credit, because after coming all these guys, he kind of tends to get forgotten a little bit. But Kennedy's legacy is according to Dan Morgenstern, which has a really nice essay here in the book. Many great words by the amazing late Dan Morgenstern. There are very few recordings of him that are not worth listening to, and he was a good partner on the front line to his saxophonist, and that comes really clear here. The way he interacts with the saxophone, the melodies, the tones they create, they're really beautiful music here. So you have songs like Blue Bossa, Memories of You, Beck's Groove, Blue Friday, the theme, all songs stretching very long. There's only 7 songs in 2 records. So the band really stretches here. They play to their limits in terms of time, improvisation, lyricism, I dare say. And that is another great recording. One of the late, it's a 1967, late period. He was not even like recording anymore for Blue Note. He was kind of already on a descending era, not in terms of talent, but in terms of like recording, being present, right? So I think this is a great testament to his music, his artistry, his craft, his art, and really worth checking. It's a small club, the Beau Morocco. This record is like a really great feeling vibe of a club, and it's really great reading. Not only Dan Morgenstern, but there are essays here by figures like Jeremy Pelt, by Charles Tolliver. So if you're into Kenny Dorham, I think you won't be disappointed with this one. Quality-wise, music quality, pressing quality, and especially the words. I think in all these records that the Zev Feldman puts out for us, the quality of the research, photographic, historic, can be surpassed. It's really amazing what they're doing for jazz legacy, for music legacy, for the history of music and the art. So Kenny Dorham at the Blue Morocco. And as a third release on Resonance, we have another triple record, and this is literally On Fire. And I'm talking about, of course, Freddie Hubbard, On Fire, left from the Blue Morocco. Triple record. Amazingly press edited, restored, released by Zev Feldman on his Resonance label. Beautiful, beautiful booklet. Again, let's first go about the record. It was remastered from the original tapes by Matthew Lutens, and the LPs were actually cut by Bernie Grundman and pressed at the Vinylist. It was recorded by Bernard Drayton in 1967 at the Blue Morocco. As mentioned before, it was a club located in the Bronx, owned by Sylvia Robinson and her husband, who later came to own Sugar Hill Records, one of the pioneers in hip-hop. So, Hubbard's work, he worked with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. He had his own recordings with Joe Coltrane or Ornette Coleman. He was a leader for Blue Note and Impulse, and considered by many a legitimate successor to Clifford Brown. Freddie Hubbard is like really one of the greatest for sure. And this band here, the record is called On Fire for a reason. He's just playing here with Benny Maupin, Kenny Barron, Herbie Lewis, and Freddie Waits. Be released as a 2 CD on April 18, which is the Friday following a Record Store Day. It was co-produced by Bernard Drayton and Zev Feldman, the jazz detective. There are interviews here by Zev with Benny Maupin, Kenny Barrow, and appreciations by Charles Tolliver, Eddie Henderson, Steve Bernstein, Jeremy Pelt, and more. And this record captures Freddie Hubbard at a very important point in his career. He was forging himself, according to Zev, in this great place in the pantheon, in the podium of the greatest jazz trumpeter. So this shows him at the height of his powers, according to Zev. He was already established leader. He participated in great, important historical recordings. So here he was really on his own, commanding his bands. one of the greatest players in history, and he's free to exercise, to improvise, to really deliver his notes, and with a band that really shines as well on their own instruments. So there's solos, there's performances by every single member here, and I think the listener will be very rewarding with performances that stretch, with so many great songs like Crisis, Echoes of Blue, Bye Bye Blackbird, Summertime, Breaking Point. There's 2 recordings of Breaking Point here on side E and side F, and he's really exercising all his powers here. He was very intense playing with Freddie Hubbard, according to Benny Maupin. Very exciting to be able to be pushed. Kenny Dorham also acknowledges this greatness of playing with Freddie Hubbard, that in a single song, in a single package, they could go everywhere, from very avant-garde and switch in a dime like this, going to very straight ahead traditional jazz. And Freddie was always the instigator. And so this recording here shows that in a band that can do that, play from very traditional to very advanced type of music. What they do here is really spectacular. Also, a great document being released by Zev on this Record Store Day. And one more that I recommend. Really worth checking. We're going to be talking to Zev. I'm not sure if the interview comes before or after this video. So he's going to give into more details on how the tapes were recovered, how he got into contact with the States, and how the process was. But I bet it was a lot of fun, and I'm curious to see. And lastly, it's Record Store Day, right? So what else to expect? Of course, there will be a Bill Evans release. And many questions sometimes, well, what's so much Bill Evans? I think one of the most important things is he was wildly popular. Everybody likes his music. He was the most influential piano players and popular jazz musicians ever. So I think in that regard, and being recorded so well and so frequently, I think it's more than justified that there are so many Bill Evans releases and great recordings, great testimonies of his work. So this release here, it's coming again as a limited, available as a CD the Friday following Record Store Day. It's called Bill Evans Further Ahead, live in Finland from 1964 to 1969. This comes on Elemental Records from Spain. This great collaboration that he have overseas with Zev Feldman, and they release great stuff too. Not only this Record Store they release, but throughout the year they have great soul music, very successful, beautiful Motown releases, Brazilian music, and even more jazz on many different labels. So Elemental really attests to its quality. It's one of the top reissue labels out there, in my opinion. So this comes in this collaboration. They have this great relationship they have with the Finnish music archives. And this record shows Bill Evans touring in Europe in 64, 65, and 69. We have different iterations of his trio. We have some quartets playing as well. And first and foremost, these records were remastered from the original master tapes, restored and cut by Matthew Lutens. Excellent, again, work by Matthew. So in 1964, we have this trio just not too long. Scholar Farrell passed, and so his replacement here was Chuck Israel. They're playing with Larry Bunkin on drums, and this was recorded on August 13, 1964. Still on the first record, have another recording from 65, but here with Bill Evans on piano, Niels Henning Ortiz Peterson on bass, Alan Dawson on drums, and Lee Konitz on alto sax on My Melancholy Baby. Interestingly, it was one of the first performances of an HOP with Bill Evans. I mean, it was his first actually, and Bill Evans had just found him while in Europe, and invited him to join this performance here on record 1. On record 2, we have a trio of Bill Evans, Eddie Gomez, and Marty Morell, which was his late trio, probably the one that had the biggest longevity here, right? The booklet, great photographic work of his performances across the years. Great foreword by journalist Mike Myers, one of the great specialist. These beautiful pictures here, and you have testimonies from Eddie Gomez, from Marty Morell. It's just Chuck Israels. It's a great volume here to read more about Bill Evans and get more into his music and understand his changes, his players, and everything. And he was a guy that was into a lot of Debussy, Beethoven. He was also a big fan of Bud Powell, and I think it comes across here in what he's trying to make and what he's trying to accomplish with the music, the lyricism, the subtleties, this kind of impressionist type of take in some of the compositions here. So, and you have all those classics: How My Heart Sings, Nardees, Autumn Leaves, My Melancholy Baby, Round Midnight, Autumn Leaves again, Nardees. There are so many, and those songs are playing so beautifully in so many different iterations. And very interesting here is how the sound comes so crisp, so organic. The band is like in sync so well, no matter which band, because Bill sort of, as in many of the comments here by the musicians, how Bill always made them feel at ease, relaxed, and ready to go in any direction he wanted. And most important, if you're into Bill Evans, I think all these Record Store Day releases, no matter what, they always deliver great sound, great presentation, package, liner notes, everything that you need to understand him a little better. And I particularly like his Norwegian, his Finnish, those tours, because there you can actually see how happy he was. In many books, in many accounts, interviews, he always seemed to be very, very happy and pleased to be playing in Europe, exposed to different musicians, different audiences, different vibe. So he always felt stimulated, and I think that came across from himself, projecting to the band. And no matter which of the street concerts that are registered here, you're gonna feel a Bill Evans that this incredible lyrical, poetic, impressionist, again, piano player that conducted his trios and quartets, quintets, even solo, in a manner that's very personal, that's very his own, and that has a very great, interesting signature when playing in Europe. So I think these European registers are like some of his best, and different iteration of this band. I think something very cool about Bill Evans is that there are so many versions of his bands, and people tend to focus too much on his early Riverside recordings. Of course, there was Scott LaFaro there, like providing greatness. But I think in terms of creativity, in terms like different, more joyful experimental music, I think his late recordings are to be checked and watched, because I think they're even better. So this is it for Record Store Day 2025. Let me know what you think. Give us your comments. We're still going to talk to Zev, so you can see those reviews. You can also listen to what Zev has to say to us. And thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check our Discord server and our Instagram page. Thank you so much for watching once again.